certainly been a while, hasn't it? I haven't done a video on this channel since May. For the most part, I really haven't seen anything that I was interested in talking about. I'm not the kind of guy who will just make up stuff to talk about, because if I don't have something I want to get off my chest, I don't talk about it. So, I haven't done anything on this channel recently. Oh, by the way, great setting, isn't it? Had to move everything into another room of the house because my family is loud and they love their TV. But enough about that. Today's video, we're talking about petitions, and not like petitions to do anything political, but petitions that I think are kind of silly. Now, there's one that's been going around on a lot of my friends' Facebook walls recently that is asking Fremantle Media North America, the company that owns the rights to a lot of game shows from the past and present, to allow Game Show Network to air the two of their most popular shows from the 80s that were made by Reg Grundy, Sail of the Century and Scrabble. Well, for those, most of you might not be aware of those shows. I'm sure the people who like this channel, all 5 of you, are probably aware of what these 2 game shows are, but they were very big in the 80s. And they were rerun on the USA Network in the early 90s until they switched over to showing Law & Order SVU and NCIS 75 times a day, every other day. But they have never been aired on GSN. So the reason I'm talking about it is I see these guys, they're very passionate about their game shows. They really love the old school game shows a lot. And I can see why they would want Sail and Scrabble on the network. Those are 2 game shows I like, actually. I like both of them because I like Sail. You got a lot of strategy you have to think about when you go for the instant bargains. I like how they got the game trivia set up. And Scrabble does very well with the words. It's sort of like the Bill Engvall lingo, only much better. Much better written, not nearly as many jokes centered on the male anatomy, but I digress. The reason why I have to talk about it is because I hate to be the proverbial turd in the punch bowl, but I am not a big believer in the petitions that these start online, and especially when it's something like this. Anybody who has tuned into GSN at any point since at least 2004, well, or at the very least in the last 3-4 years, knows that they focus more on the current generation of game shows. Take a look at their primetime schedule. Basically, you've got Steve Harvey's Family Feud, John O'Hurley and his feud, some Richard Karn feud, Minute to Win It, 5th Grader, and pretty soon they're going to be beating their originals down our throats. The Bible Challenge, where they're going to replay 9 episodes 967 billion times over the next month. Beat the shit. Don't get me wrong, though. I'm not saying it's bad because it's a Bible game. I just don't think a show with only 9 episodes should be rerun a whole boatload of times over a short period. Anyway, there's that. You've got Beat the Chefs. You got a new version of Pyramid coming out. And pretty soon they're going to dive back into the always successful world of reality with crap like Family Trade and the War of the Rose Sisters. So just take a look at their primetime lineup. Do you see anything that is from before 2007, I'll say, in their primetime lineup? And you can say $25,000 Pyramid. That won't last, folks. Call me a pessimist, but $25,000 Pyramid is on Friday nights for one reason only, and it's because they want people to know what the format for the new Pyramid basically is going to look like. They're not keeping it there because it's winning in the ratings. It's actually one of their worst nighttime lineups in terms of how many people watch. So then they're keeping it there just to tell people, hey, there's a new version coming out with Mike Richards on September 3rd. You might want to watch that. This is what it kind of looks like. So even if they were to get something like Sale or Scrabble, I think that those two shows would not appeal much. I think Scrabble has a chance. Scrabble would have a chance, even though it's kind of dated by our standards today. It has a little bit of a chance because it's a word association game, and the old school games GSN tends to focus on tend to be word association games. So I think that could stand a chance, possibly. Sale of the Century would not, because it's focused more on trivia, and it's more on shopping. And GSN, to my knowledge, doesn't really embrace shopping-based games. I mean, they haven't had The Price is Right on in over a decade. And I keep seeing some of those same friends circulating this petition for Sale and Scrabble, talking about stuff like Shop Till You Drop and Supermarket Sweep. Those kinds of shows would not work on GSN, I don't think. They're the kind of shows that have a cult phenomenon. They're cult-based, more or less. The mainstream audience is not going to embrace it the way some people do. And as much as I would like to see them add some variety, I mean, the way the schedule is going to look starting next week, starting next Thursday, is going to be a mess. Because you got Bible Challenge and Beat the Chefs have splattered all over the schedule at random times, multiple airings in a day, and I would not think they made too many of either. I would think for Chefs, maybe 10 to 15 episodes, and for Bible Challenge, it's only going to be 9. So those two are going to be beaten severely. But even so, after those two debut, the schedule is going to be a mess. You're going to see different shows on at different times. It's going to be confusing to keep up with. And GSN's modus operandi is not to freshen up the old rotation until they absolutely have to. Like, they didn't get this current new lease of $25,000 Pyramid because they wanted to. They got it because they wanted a fresh set of episodes to remind people what the show was like. Like I said, for this new Pyramid, they waited 3 years to get Password back on the air, and it's struggling. Family Feud with Richard Dawson can't find the light of day because its lease has been beaten so severely, people don't care. And it pales in comparison to Steve Harvey, which, unfortunately, folks, he's the darling of the network. Get used to it. But getting back on point, Sale and Scrabble, I'd love to see them rerun again. Personally, in my heart, I would love it. But in my mind, it's a lost cause. Besides, you're trying to get 5,000 people to sign up for something like that. I just don't see it happening. I don't think enough people really remember. The audience that game shows cater to mainly are really old. And the game shows of the past don't attract the younger demographic for the most part because they don't have the elements that game shows have to have today. The flash, the glitz. There's really only one game show on the air, Jeopardy, that doesn't really need to have flash and glitz. Just look at The Price is Right. You have to have a guest star every other day. Or Wheel of Fortune. Lots of sound and fury signifying nothing. Let's make a deal. Millionaire. Am I leaving anything out? Well, I've mentioned the main players. Those kinds of games, and the new game shows they try on other networks, they don't appeal to a traditional game show audience because they can't afford to. Sale and Scrabble are traditional game shows. They're fun, but they're traditional game shows, and I just don't think that GSN, at any point in this schedule, can really afford to take a chance and put either one on the schedule. And besides, we all know how notorious GSN is for being cheap. Fremantle is probably not the problem in this. It's GSN trying to lowball them to get them on the air, if they were trying to get them on the air, and Fremantle saying no. So, to my friends, what you're doing is a really noble cause. I give you all the credit in the world for trying. However, at the end of the day, you're wasting your time. I'm sorry.
Scrabble is a Reg Grundy production.